Turn around and put your hands behind your back, or I'm going to put my hands on you.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Southern Draw Law. My name is James White, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, former police officer. If you've been around the internet for more than 3 minutes, you've probably seen a police interrogation. And if you've seen many police interrogations, you've probably seen scenarios where a person references an attorney in one way and the officer keeps asking questions, and then you've seen other scenarios where the person references an attorney or mentions a lawyer in another way and the question immediately stops. So what's the difference? Well, that's the subject of today's video, and the example we're going to use comes to us from a YouTube channel called Donnie Rapture, and it depicts a BUI arrest from April of 2023 made by Florida Fish and Wildlife officers. Now, I've made some edits to the video for the purposes of our discussion, but you should head over to Donnie Rapture's channel, watch the video in its entirety, and give them credit for sharing it. With that, let's take a look at the video, and then we'll come back and talk about the law.
Are you the registered owner?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. What's your name? You got your ID on you?
Yeah.
You have your ID on you?
Yeah.
Okay.
83.
What's your date of birth, man? Hey, buddy. What year were you born? Okay. Do you have your voting ID card?
I don't, but I'm on file. I got voter's license for life.
Okay, so you've taken it, you just don't have it with you is what you're saying?
I don't have it with me, but I do have my voter's license.
Oh, you've taken it. You've taken the course is what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at. Okay.
Let them check my paperwork. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I
Okay.
got my ID coming.
Did you take your voting safety in Florida?
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. All right. Do you got a whistle or horn and a fire extinguisher on board? Okay. Do you mind showing me real quick just so I can take a look?
The only thing is I got to ski. I got to pop things open. I don't want stuff to get open.
I know, but
You want
that's
to
part. Yeah, I just don't want to see it.
Well, first let me get my registration and insurance back, and then I'll show you everything.
Okay.
Because I don't want to destroy my screen.
I understand. Do you have a place I can tie the back off of this? Do you have like a cleat or anything on the back?
Yeah, it's in the back.
Where at? If you want to sit on our boat for a second, that's fine.
Excuse me?
I said if you want to come over and sit on our boat so there's more room.
I'm trying to get back home.
Right.
Hold on, it's
You gotta
two-seater.
pop everything and show you, like, seriously?
Okay, so you don't want to show me it?
So hold on.
It's not that we don't want to show you,
Hold
we
on.
gotta move everything.
Yeah.
Come on now. I don't have storage and everything like a 3-yard.
Okay. Can you pull it up so I can look at the gauge? Thank you. Okay, so it's got to be in the green to still be good. Okay. This one is. I'm just saying I had to check it.
All right, no
I
problem.
appreciate that, but I'm really not asking you. I'm only talking to the captain. I don't need that. That's fine. Okay, you'll go home, but you're dragging this stop out by constantly interrupting. So it's going to go quicker if you just stop.
Yeah, it's a one-seater.
There's no storage. It's a
It's a
two-seater.
smallest jet ski.
I know
What do
you.
you want me to do,
A
take
Spark.
storage?
This is the smallest jet ski that they sell.
Which is why I offered you to come sit over
It's
here.
okay, I don't want to sit on
Okay, that's fine, but we just don't want you to continue to drag the stop out by constantly. Okay, well then you should stop interrupting is what we're getting at. That's all we're trying to say. Did you want to show me that whistle out of there?
I did.
Oh, you just gave me a container.
I mean, you should have took it.
I didn't. It's unopened. I don't know what that is.
Opened it.
Okay, go ahead and open it for me. I'm asking to. I'm asking for a sound device. I'm not opening your stuff.
You want to see it, though.
Right, but I'm not gonna open your stuff. I'm
Brand
asking
new,
for
we
you
don't
to.
use it.
Okay.
Here, I got it.
That's all we wanted to see. Yep. That's all we wanted to see. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I go to Miami and I never have a problem in Miami.
It's fine.
I go to Hollover and I never have a
Every
problem.
jet ski gets checked for a fire extinguisher, a whistle, and a registration.
But when you go to Hollover, you don't have this problem.
It's not a problem. It's our job. Officer is working on your paperwork. He's gonna get with you in a second here.
All right,
But
I'm fine. I got a lawyer.
Okay, that's fine. Listen.
I got a lawyer.
Listen,
Do what y'all got to do.
Listen, hey, calm down.
This is great.
Okay,
Right, man,
we're not even.
y'all being an asshole.
Nobody's saying you're getting a ticket. Nobody's saying you're getting a
But
ticket.
you know I got a little ski.
Nobody's saying
Y'all-
you're getting
y'all
a
wanna take
ticket.
my whistles
Are
off.
you gonna stop talking and listen to me? Nobody's saying you're getting a ticket. How much have you had to drink today?
I didn't have none.
Didn't have none?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, because you're slurring your speech. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm trying to see why you're doing that. Okay. You're agitated and stuff.
I just left the boat.
Right, and you're super agitated. That's not normal.
Okay, so it's April 2023. The background here is that the Florida Fish and Wildlife officer, Officer Wild, which I know is interesting, ends up stopping this couple for violating some no-wake rule, which, as I understand it, negates the entire purpose of having a jet ski, but whatever. I'll be honest with you guys, I understand we need safe waterways and all that, but the idea that we have to jump through all these governmental regulatory hoops just to use natural resources is oppressive and moronic. And the truth is, and I've discussed this with wildlife agents that I've worked with, but the public doesn't care about BUI until someone dies in a boating accident. You get a lot of public support on DUI enforcement. You get a fraction of that same support when it comes to boating. People just understand that drinking while you're on a boat is kind of part of the experience. And specifically, when you put a BUI case in front of a jury, they're very forgiving in light of the public perception of drinking and boating. Think about the fatal boating accidents of which you are aware. They are either A, related to the Alex Murdaugh case that you heard about or watched on the Netflix documentary, or B, someone you know personally died, but there's very limited circumstances under which people will remember. I say that from personal experience. My own father was killed when I was 10 years old as a result of his boat being struck by a coal barge. No drinking, just a fatal boating accident. And guess what? The wildlife agents or the DNR where I live, they didn't do anything to stop the barge from being out of compliance. You know what I mean? They were probably out harassing people that were just trying to have a good time on the lake. But anyway, in my own life, I can say it's my dad's accident and a couple more that I could recall if somebody asked me. The point is the public is desensitized to drinking and boating. And if you're going to get a conviction as a prosecutor for a BUI, you have to have somebody who's obviously hammered on camera before a jury's going to convict that person in most cases. Now, what's important here, though, is that our guy, Justin, who's being investigated, does appear to be, at least to me, mildly under the influence of something. But he doesn't look hammered, at least not in my opinion. His speech is a little slurred, and that may just be the way he talks, so that's another thing that makes it hard to prove. The officer says he can smell alcohol, but he doesn't say that in the first interaction. He says that later on in the interaction. So my guess is that he had a few that day at some point while he was boating. That doesn't mean he's boating under the influence as far as the law goes, because you have to be able to prove that the person was either so intoxicated that they couldn't operate the boat safely, or you have to prove that they had a BAC or blood alcohol concentration above a certain amount, like a 0.08. So in order to prove the case, the state needs to be able to show evidence that he wasn't able to safely operate the boat either because of his BAC or because of the way he was conducting himself. And I don't think they had that here. He's balancing on a jet ski, which is difficult if you're sober. He hasn't crashed, and while he's given them some pushback, he is irritated because the possum cops want to mess up his lake day, but he's able to control the vessel, keep his passenger on, hadn't flopped anybody into the water. He accesses all the things they need to see, and he does it with an attitude, but you know what? That's his prerogative. He wants to redress his government about being harassed on the water. There's evidence that he may be under the influence of something, but not necessarily evidence that he's impaired. Now, as you probably know, the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution requires that officers give a Miranda warning when people are subject to custodial interrogation. Field sobriety tests have been held to not be custodial. Now, I've long since had a soapbox about BUI investigations being custodial interrogations because they require the person to go onto the law enforcement boat in order to be sat down in a certain place and in a certain position and do the sobriety checks. But as far as my limited amount of research has revealed, the issue hasn't really been litigated in a meaningful way on a national level. Again, I believe the person is in custody because most of the time the sobriety tests happen when the person is physically moved into the wildlife agent's boat. In my opinion, that's no different than being in the back of a police car, and that is almost always considered in custody. The real test for the custody part of custodial interrogation is whether a reasonable person would think that they're free to leave the encounter, and there's a bunch of different factors that the courts consider to try to figure that out. But to me, I think it's almost impossible that a normal, ordinary person would feel like after a law enforcement agent has moved them onto a fish and wildlife boat that they could just get up and leave that encounter without being arrested for it. So the issue presented by our video here, though, is what is a proper invocation of a person's Fifth Amendment rights? So let's watch some more of our video and see if Justin here makes any proper invocations during his interaction with the fish and wildlife officers.
It's crazy to get my whistle.
It's not crazy. It's not crazy. It's not crazy. It's part of the water. Okay. All right. If you're operating on the water, you have certain rules. Just like you have to have blinkers when you're out on the road, right? Same type of thing. Okay.
I'm hooked up.
I got it. I appreciate that.
100% in the code.
I appreciate that. But you also have improper display, and we check to make sure you have safety equipment. Your numbers aren't correct. You know, we check that stuff. Your vest isn't even buckled up and zip. All that stuff is supposed to.
My numbers ain't correct.
Yes, I'll explain that. Okay, they're the right numbers, but they're not spaced properly. There's a bunch of rules on the water that you're not following. So again, I'm gonna ask you, how much have you had to drink? I know you've had some. I can smell smell it on you, okay?
Go ahead, none.
Okay, well, let me just check your eyes, make sure you're good to drive back.
You're not showing respect. You're talking about watching my eyes and all that. I got a lawyer.
All we have to go on is what you've shown us. What if
I got
you're
a
not
lawyer.
impaired and you don't do the field sobriety task?
It doesn't matter. I got a lawyer. I got a lawyer. I got a lawyer.
We literally just want to make sure your eyes
Just
are okay,
saying,
to make sure you can drive
straight.
safely.
So prove it.
That's
I'm
all.
not gonna prove nothing.
That's
I got
all
a
we.
lawyer to
That's
prove
all
it.
we want to do, man.
Do what you gotta do, baby girl. Go. I got a lawyer.
Listen,
I'm
time out.
straight.
Okay.
Do what you gotta do.
Okay. Listen, are you done, man? Are you done throwing a fit? Are you done? Relax,
lawyer.
dude. I'm trying to talk to you like a man,
Straight.
and you're acting like a kid.
My lawyer always told me never talk to police. I'm
Okay.
straight. I already did my time.
Okay.
Straight.
Listen.
Because I went 10 miles per hour.
It's not about speed, but that's not
I
here.
didn't even speed.
Okay, you did, but it's not.
My jet ski only goes 30 miles per hour.
Okay.
You want to be honest?
It's a slow speed minimum wake. Okay, it's not about necessarily speed. It's about the wake that you make.
We can call my lawyer.
Okay, what I'm trying to explain what we were observing, why we pulled you over. Okay, and you're not listening. That's
Don't
what I'm
care
telling
what
you.
y'all did. Call my lawyer.
Okay, I'm not calling any lawyers. So here's the situation. Okay, I have never dealt with somebody that truly was fine to drive that would act this way. Okay, I
You
don't
can
know
say
why.
what you want to say,
I don't
but
know why you're acting
but you
this
know,
way.
You've been in this
You're acting
experience
super
a long time.
agitated for no
But I'm
reason.
just-
All right, so I'd just like to check your eyes and get you on your way. That's all I'd like to do.
Do what
Are
gotta
you gonna
do.
cooperate with
I'm
that?
not cooperating nothing.
You're not gonna let me check your eyes to see if you're safe to drive.
Do what you got to do. I got a lawyer.
Are you going to provide a breath sample? If he-
I ain't gonna provide nothing.
This is the way you want to take this.
Nah, they want to act like that. I got a lawyer.
This is the direction you want to take. Is what I'm asking you.
I got a lawyer. I got money. I'm straight.
That's fine. I'm not asking about court. I'm not asking
I
about
got a
any of that.
lawyer.
Do me a favor. Put your feet shoulder width apart.
I'm not doing none of that.
Apart is what I'm
Lock
asking.
me up. I got a lawyer.
Justin.
Straight, bro.
Justin, what I'm asking is if you want to continue.
You trying to do kindergarten and that stuff.
I'm trying to have you.
What?
I'm
What?
trying to have you sit
Okay,
down.
go ahead.
Sit down.
Keep in mind that there are basically two separate rights to consider as it relates to the Fifth Amendment. The right to remain silent and the right to counsel. They're not the same and they both have to be separately invoked. If a person says they want to remain silent, they actually have to remain silent. The police are supposed to scrupulously honor the person's right to remain silent, but when a person just invokes the right to remain silent, there are circumstances where the police can still talk to that person. That was covered in the case of Michigan versus Mosley, which I'll leave a link to in the description. But basically there are several factors to consider, and I've discussed this in my video entitled Sloppy Florida Deputy Violates Woman's Rights on Traffic Stop. I'll leave a link to that in an end card at the end of this video, and you can go back and watch it. But essentially, you have to invoke your right to remain silent, and then the police have to stop asking you questions, and then there are several things that the courts consider as to whether or not that request was scrupulously honored. But the right to counsel under the Fifth Amendment has a separate set of rules. The Supreme Court case called Edwards versus Arizona first established that once a person invokes their right to counsel under the Fifth Amendment, the questioning must stop unless and until a lawyer is present. In a later Supreme Court case called United States versus Davis, the court clarified what a proper invocation of a person's right to counsel looks like. The court in Davis said that a proper invocation has to be unambiguous. It can't be equivocal or ambiguous, meaning it couldn't be interpreted by a reasonable officer in the same situation as something other than a person invoking their right to have counsel present. A reference to an attorney during the interaction is not enough to put the police on notice that the person is invoking their right to counsel. So as we've seen here, Justin has said, I got a lawyer some like 15 times. But that statement could be taken by a reasonable officer to mean that he's not worried about what's going to happen because he's confident in his lawyer's ability to defend him. While you and I might see that as obvious that he's invoking his right to counsel, the courts don't see it that way. It's not the same thing as saying, as far as the courts are concerned, that you want a lawyer now in this situation. It's basically saying, I'm not worried about what you do to me because my lawyer's going to get me off. So let's get back to the video and see what else happens and see if Justin ever makes a proper invocation.
To the edge of the
It's
seat.
kindergarten.
To the edge of the seat. All right, shoulder width apart. Okay, a little bit further apart. Shoulder width, like this.
What?
As wide
Like
as your
this?
as wide as your shoulder. Yep. Make a fist with both hands. Point your index fingers.
Mom, I'm not doing
Put
that.
down on the side of your on the side. No, you got to be sitting because we're on a boat. Okay, you got to be sitting. Okay. All right. Stay in that position while I explain. Okay. All I need you to do is when I say begin, you're going to tilt your head back to a 45-degree angle. Okay. You're going to close your eyes. It's going to look like this. I'm not going to close my eyes, but you will. Okay. When I tell you to, you're going to touch the tip of your nose with the tip of your finger and immediately return it to your side. This is the pad of your finger. This is the side of your finger. This is the tip of your finger. This is the tip of your nose. This is the side of your nose. This is the
See,
brow
I
of your
don't
nose.
know all that.
So,
I want a lawyer, man. This shit, I want a lawyer.
So I'm trying to explain to you,
I want
Justin.
a lawyer, man.
Justin, this is the tip.
Lawyer.
This is the tip of your nose. I'm asking you to point the tip of your finger to the tip of your
I don't care about spending a
nose.
night in jail, lawyer.
So you're,
you don't. Tip.
I'm trying to show you, but you're interrupting me before I can even explain it to you. Okay? You gonna listen or no?
I'd rather pay 10 grand and get out of this.
Okay, but are you gonna listen or no? I can.
You keep having
You're interrupting me though while I'm explaining it to you. Okay? All right. So this is the tip of your finger.
I told you, lawyer.
This is the tip of your nose.
Tip of this, tip of my and lawyer.
All right. So this is the direction you want to go.
Direction I want to go 100%.
You don't want to do any more of these tasks.
100%.
You don't want to do any more of these tasks.
I'm saying I'm not taking the test.
Okay, it's not a test. It's a task.
Listen,
I'm asking you. Keep that on.
Handcuff.
And there we have it. Finally, Justin transitions from I got a lawyer to call my lawyer, which is sort of halfway in between, but still not proper, to ultimately saying, I want a lawyer. Now, of course, the officer still continues to violate the Fifth Amendment and ultimately makes an admission on body cam that he made a retaliatory arrest. And we'll look at that in a second. But again, everything that happens after he says, I want a lawyer, is not going to be admissible in court. It's going to be subject to suppression because the police officer continues to ask questions to try to coerce him into doing something that he's already said he's not going to do. So there are multiple violations of the Fifth Amendment here after he makes a proper invocation of his right to counsel. Now, let's watch the end of this video where the officer is caught kind of on a hot mic explaining that he made a retaliatory arrest because of the way they were acting.
Okay, so you don't want to do anything more going forward. I'm trying to give you every opportunity, Justin, to show me that you can drive.
I'm straight, bro.
Okay, this is your.
Try me like a fish.
This is your choice that you're going to make. Is what I'm telling you. So again, you don't want any more of this. You don't want to do any field sobriety if you're careful. Okay, so nothing else to show me that you're. Nothing else to show me that you're safe to drive, okay? Last opportunity. Then I have to make my decision based on what I've seen. Okay. So this is the last opportunity, I'm telling you. Again, this is it, dude. Do me a favor, turn around. Put your hands behind your back. I'm only going to ask you one more time. I'm telling you, turn around and put your hands behind your back, or I'm going to put my hands on you. Child.
What are y'all doing, fellas? Y'all, he's not
Bring this hand over here. I got his hand. You got his hand?
My hand. In my head. In my head. You crackers up my. You crackers up my. Ass crackers. Lock me up. Yeah, that's my fucking wife when I get out of jail. Put that 10-inch in your wife.
No, BUI.
Y'all get drunk, nigga. I did 12 months in.
It was just going to be a ticket, then they acted up and we were like,
So, according to him, he was just going to issue tickets for the BS numbers not being properly spaced or whatever other chicken shit, arbitrary nonsense they used to justify their warrantless seizure of a person in their boat. But Justin redressed his government, let it be known that he felt harassed, so the cop turned it into a contempt of cop investigation disguised as a BUI investigation. In closing, police officers generally, but specifically wildlife agents, have entirely too much discretion in playing fast and loose with the Fourth Amendment. Most state laws, sadly, have allowed wildlife agents and Division of Natural Resource agents to enter onto a boat anytime they want to do a safety check. And we just got to see exactly what happens during the safety check. The violations they're looking for are spacing on boat numbers. The people give them a little bit of pushback while ultimately complying with their silly checks, and it gets turned into a criminal investigation. Now, that might not be so bad if it wasn't being used as a tool of retaliation, but just like MIMS, when somebody pisses a cop off, they say, well, step out of the car. That's not officer safety, and it's not pursuant to MIMS. And when you turn something into a contempt of cop investigation because you don't like what a person says, that's not pursuant to your duty or authority under a safety check, and it's not pursuant to your responsibility to keep the public safe on the waterways. It's you having your ego compromised and not being able to deal with it. And then you ultimately end up charging people with crimes, and they have to spend tens of thousands of dollars in order to be exonerated of those crimes, and then nothing happens to the police officer. Now, at the end of the video, Donnie Rapture indicates that he pulled the records and the BUI charge was dropped. Now, I believe the BUI charge was probably dropped for a couple different reasons. One, if you look at the entire interaction, there was really no evidence of impairment as far as illegal impairment other than the observations the officer says he made: odor of alcohol, slurred speech, agitation. Now, we're not going to comment on how agitated the police officer acted and how he escalated the encounter with both of them and started mouthing off to the girl because he didn't like what she had to say. We'll forget about that for a second because, qualified immunity or whatever. But the second reason is that he did finally make a proper invocation of right to counsel, and then even though the officer didn't stop questioning him, the state would not have been able to use anything that happened after that proper invocation because the officer didn't adhere to his invocation. And he ultimately did eventually shut down and just stop cooperating. So there really wasn't anything the state could use to prove that he was guilty of a BUI under the law. Now, according to Donnie Rapture, he was actually still charged with resisting. This is an important note. Once a person has been told they're under arrest or threatened with arrest if they don't do A, B, C, or D, the violation is completed for the purposes of civil litigation. The only question would be like damages. And there's really no reason to resist, even passively. Even in states like Tennessee that allows a reasonable use of force as a self-defense privilege to avoid an unlawful arrest, there are contradictory provisions in the law that still punish people for exercising that privilege. It advances the lawsuit in no way whatsoever to resist arrest unless the police respond disproportionately to the amount of resistance and then beat you up and cause a bunch of damages and then create an excessive force claim in light of the Graham factors. However, that is an enormous risk to take on because if they get too excessive, the suspect may die or be permanently injured. And so if it's me, I'll take my chances suing for false arrest. I don't personally think it's worth the risk to give the police too much license to get rough with me in hopes that they might do just enough damage to get me paid, but not enough to permanently impact my life. So to recap, there are two separate Fifth Amendment rights that we're discussing in this video. Number one is the right to remain silent. And again, an example of an improper invocation would be, well, I should probably remain silent. That's not good enough. I invoke my right to remain silent, and then you shut your mouth. That's a proper invocation. Number two, the right to counsel. I got a lawyer, not a proper invocation, as we saw. I want a lawyer, and I'm not answering questions without one. Proper invocation. And then actually do the thing that you say you're going to do and shut up. This thing that auditors do where they say, I don't answer questions, that is not affording them any protection under the Fifth Amendment. That's just them trying to dominate the conversation. Now, a lot of people comment about officers violating the Sixth Amendment right to counsel. That's not actually correct. The Sixth Amendment is about having a right to counsel at all relevant stages of the judicial process, and there isn't a judicial process until you've been formally introduced into the criminal justice system. So when an officer is interrogating you at the station prior to charges being brought or interrogating you on the side of the road, that is before the Sixth Amendment actually applies to your case because there isn't a case yet. The Sixth Amendment also has the confrontation clause, which also comes into play once you've been charged and you have an opportunity to cross-examine the witnesses against you or confront them. And the Sixth Amendment is also offense specific, which is something we'll go over in more detail later, but it essentially means that if you're incarcerated on, say, robbery, and the police want to come and talk to you about a murder, the Sixth Amendment applies to your robbery because you've already been charged with that, but it doesn't apply to the murder that they want to talk to you about. Your Fifth Amendment does, and that's why you have to re-invoke your right to remain silent and do it all over again as if it's a brand new thing, because again, the Sixth Amendment doesn't attach till you get to court. That's all for this one, guys. Leave me a comment and let me know what you think of the sort of administrative state and their ability to do random safety checks and then what that leads to. Please remember to like and subscribe. Check out some other videos on the channel and leave me a comment on there as well. Until I see you again, take care. Always film your interactions with the police and keep your evidence to yourself.